Welcome to Stage Dive, a podcast where we go deep on the art of live performance to help artists perform better on stage. I am your host, Jack Dawkins. I am a rapper, poet, and storyteller out of Boulder, Colorado. My guest for today is Salisha Thomas. She is an actor and performer living in New York City. She has been in multiple Broadway productions, and she has also started several, yes, I emphasize, several of her own podcasts, which was a passion that she started during the pandemic. She is such a wonderful ball of energy, and what I love most about this conversation is how we dive into what it feels like to truly take ownership of your authentic voice, your authentic presence, and what you really feel like you were put on this earth to do. If you're looking for a little jolt of inspiration, this is the episode for you. I know you'll enjoy it as much as I did.
Okay, I want you, if I'm remembering right, you were 2 weeks into rehearsals for the Britney Spears musical in New York, and then everything shuts down. Can you give me the, I was in this place, feeling this thing, walk me through the blow by blow of, receiving that news and trying to digest it?
Jack, really? This is where we're starting, in the trenches. Okay.
It can only go up from here, though.
That is
only get better.
So real. It hurts. I was so excited because I got my first taste of unemployment after Beautiful closed. Beautiful on Broadway. I was one of the Shirelles. I'm like, oh my goodness. I didn't even know what unemployment was. LOL, because after this pandemic. But in 2019, I didn't know what unemployment was. I was so nervous. I was like, am I ever going to get another show? 3 months later, I got the Britney Spears musical, signed my contract for DC, signed the out-of-town contract, the out-of-town before we come to Broadway, signed my Broadway contract for when we move to New York in the summer. Signed them both at the same time. Life was good. I'm like, we're back. I'm about to have my second Broadway show, my first OBC, first original Broadway cast. And so we started rehearsals, LOL, March 1st or March 3rd or something like that of 2020. No freaking idea what is going on. Just so happy. Everything is good. I was skinny.
In the before time.
I was skinny and bright-eyed, and we started rehearsals. We actually finished through the first act, and, things started to fall apart really that second week. Other shows were closing. That was back in the days when it was like, oh my gosh, one person at Phantom of the Opera has COVID. Oh my God, so sorry for them. That sucks for them. And then the next thing you know, 1 million people had it. And people in our cast were hacking and coughing and couldn't March 12th rolls around. One of our people called in sick. And so our producers said, you know what, guys? Someone called in sick today. We just want to be safe. Everyone go home. At lunch, they said, go home. And I just remember all of us were just what do you mean go home?
Oh my God.
We had no idea when we're coming back. We think it's a couple of weeks, but just sit at home. There's nothing to do. Our first instinct was, great, so movie night at whose place?
Right. 100%.
What bar are we going to? Vacation. We had no idea. And I remember once it was actually setting in what was happening, there was no hanging out, and we were in our own homes. And I was Googling. I literally Googled how what does stay home mean? And I'm wait, what's happening? This is so dumb. Wait, actually just stay home. I remember going to the grocery store and the in my neighborhood, and the shelves were ravaged. There was not a lot of things there. Everyone was just panic shopping. And the lady in front of me in line thought she was like breaking news. She was like, "Have you heard? We're in a pandemic. Have you heard?" I'm like, "Hefe, yes, I heard.
Yeah.
I lost my job because of
Yes.
it. How about you?" And
Oh my
I
God.
I thought in my mind, Jack, that like America was out of food too. And so I just bought all of the fish sticks. And that's all I got. I just bought all the fish sticks and I rationed my fish sticks for the first 2 weeks. Like seriously, like hungry. And then I looked on Facebook and all my friends were like gaining weight. I'm like, how?
We're out of food, guys. What are you doing? This is crazy.
Literally, I'm like, how is everyone gaining weight? I'm starving. And then I realized we're not in a food shortage. Delivery is still a thing. I can go back to my regular scheduled programming in terms of food so that I caught up with everybody and also gained my COVID-19. And that is where, I guess that's where I'll stop for now.
I think about this a lot. I feel like COVID, it's hard to talk about this now because we're still vaguely in it, but in like 40 or 50 years, when we get asked, like, what was it like? Because they're going to expect, they were like, well, we were in the fucking bunker underground, like, ready for this thing. It was like, we were walking around like idiots. Like, it was like, did you hear? Like, yeah, I guess we got to stay home for a few days. Like, that's weird.
That is how it
And then it
was.
just got worse.
Yeah, that's how it was at first. And then I just remember looking outside the window of my apartment and then seeing people with masks and it feeling so foreign, like, oh, everybody with the mask has COVID, which was not the case. But that is what I thought. I'm like, oh my God, what's happening? Everyone has a mask on. And it looked so alien, so scary. And I remember like all my friends on Facebook reporting like and having videos of all of them having it and struggling and being turned away from the hospitals, and people who I knew were struggling. And then that was here in New York City. And then my California friends and family were like, wait, you know people with the COVID? I'm like, I'm actually counting my friends that I know who don't have it. Because it was bad here. Like
it was bad. Yeah.
I was in my apartment 22 hours a day. I took a 2-hour walk every day. And the walk, I'm not even sure if the walk was more stressful or less, because going out into the park, I was watching people suffer. Like it was packed with people who had COVID, like visibly, and it was scary. It was literally the plague. And my walking buddies, it was the family next door to me. I remember the wife being like, Salisha, why are you walking 20 feet behind us? We don't have the plague. And then like the next day, she wasn't there. And the husband was like, I was like, Scott, where's Tam? He didn't want to tell me. He was like, she has a mild fever. She's at home. I'm like, she has it. It's right next, like, and I remember her dropping food off for me. I'm like, I don't want that. I was so scared.
Do you remember when like wiping down your groceries was a big thing for like 3 months, and everyone was like, get all the Clorox, wipe it with bleach. Who cares? Just wipe it with bleach. It was like, it was so insane.
Washing
so insane.
the delivery packages. I saved a lot of money during that time. That was the first and only time in my whole life where I would order my groceries once for the whole week. I would eat everything, and I didn't order a bunch of things on Amazon starting out like for months because I didn't want the delivery package to I just was like, I don't want any delivery food because I know people who have to provide for their families. They're gonna go to work even if they're sick. I'm like, I'm not, even though I don't think you can get it from cooked food, in my mind I'm like, I'm not taking any chances. I don't want anything delivered to me that does not need to be. And so I would just get my groceries once a week and make it stretch and wipe them down, disinfect my freaking groceries. What? People were like making me masks and sending them to me across the country. And even that, I was like, is this safe to put on my face? I was so scared. I'm laughing now, but I've never had that much anxiety in my whole life. I have a lot of friends with anxiety and I've always sympathized with them, but I never really knew what it felt like to be in a constant state of anxiety until every single day I was like, can I breathe? Am I okay? Like my mind convincing me that I was sick. When I took the antibodies test a couple months later and I never had it. I never had that season 1 COVID. But in my mind, I did. And every breath, I was like, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I was just so scared. My screen time went from 3 hours a day to 10 plus
so many
a day.
Yeah.
That's wild. People call, like, and as soon as I would get calm in my head, I would have a family member call me and be like, are you okay? With all of their anxiety, being like, I'm looking at New York on the news and a person is dying from COVID every 7 seconds. Are you okay? I'm like, oh my God. And I let the water get in the boat. And that is when my boat started to sink. I was okay before, but once I let everyone else's anxieties like get into my own head, Jack, I was done. It was literally a living hell. I'm like,
yeah.
Will this ever end?
Well, I think I was not in New York, particularly during those first 3 or 4 months, but I have lived in New York for a very long time. If you haven't lived in New York, I think it would be hard for people to understand how badly COVID broke the city. And what I mean by that is not only like people weren't out, duh, but like the way that you function in New York is you basically have your little version of it, which includes seeing a certain set of people in a certain set of circumstances, because in a city that big and that crazy, you need a little home basically, or like a little piece of familiarity that feels okay. And having that break for 15 million people at the same time, and then to have them live in a space that is by definition not really meant for living. It's like you keep your fucking clothes in your bed there.
Yes.
But no one in New York is like, my apartment is this luxurious place I settle into. For some, for sure. But generally it is like, you are not supposed to spend a lot of time in your New York apartment. So going to 22 hours a day.
Oh, going from being around a lot of people to by myself. And I have friends who were with other people and those people drove them crazy. That's a whole other type of problem. But I was just, what is it called? Solitude, except that sounds like a positive version of what I experienced. Isolation. Yeah. Okay. That's it.
There you go. Yeah.
It was isolated. Like all I had was my own thoughts telling me I'm going to die alone and no one is going to be able to save me. Do they have a hazmat suit to come? Like that is all I thought. And yeah, it's like when you want to go anywhere, it's like no one wanted to get on the subway, elevators. You sharing an elevator, there's not space. Like I remember the bus driving back and forth outside of the window. I would look at the bus and it was just empty, just driving back and forth every day. No one was on the bus. Just home. Just home.
I'm curious, like, because like also in this first 4 months, a bunch of people are like, New York's dead. It's like, you're fucking stupid. That city is never going to die. But like, I imagine that it does feel changed or different on the other side of this. So I'm curious, like, what is your experience of New York now? Which, like, I know we're not out of the pandemic, but we are certainly in a place where it's like normal enough. Everyone's kind of like, this is sort of what it is. It's going to be like this for a while. We're here.
Yeah, it feels a lot better. Oh my gosh, the fear out of the air is gone. The anxiety has evaporated. It's still not 100%, but like if I'm on a train and somebody coughs, I'm cool. Everybody around me is also cool. Before it'd be like, we're all changing train cars.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
like going
100%.
into a packed place with somebody right next to me, whether they have a mask on or not, not okay. I'm not okay. I'm not calm. And now it's like, yeah, I'm in a theater. It's packed. Maybe 10 people have masks on, maybe more, you know. But it's just, it does feel way more normal. The only thing that I think does feel weird still is shows are closing pretty quickly, way quicker than I ever remember. And so I'm wondering what that's about, if that's just like a producer choice or if the numbers aren't there or what, because shows are coming and going like boom, 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 boom. But other than that, like, it does feel like the rhythm is coming back. I feel like New York pressed pause and then pressed play a little while ago. So even though we're still like vaguely in it, like you said, it does feel like this is the city I remember.
Mm. Yeah.
And while we were in the thick of it, and I realized, okay, this is a thing. I was like, well, I feel like a lot of people were trying to figure out how to bring purpose back into their days, myself very much included, because Concrete Jungle, a lot of people come here to grind. They love the work. They don't work so that they can go on vacation. They are here because they like the grind. And
Yes.
so when you plan your whole life and identity around your job and your grind, your work, your art, whatever it is, and then you can't do it anymore, it's like, I'm lost. Who am I? I learned a lot about myself in that moment when I'm like, whoa, I've really tied my identity into what I do. I've always been the person in my building. Oh, you're the girl on Broadway. Well, who am I when I'm not in a Broadway show? Who am I when Broadway doesn't exist? When everyone, like one of my neighbors who is absolutely on the spectrum, she didn't mean to hurt my feelings or scare the crap out of me, but she would see me in the hallway and she'd be like, what are you gonna do for work?
Oh my God.
She's like, how are you gonna live? And I would like try to come up with answers. And she'd be like, but what are you going to do for money? I'm like,
Oh
stop
my God.
asking me these questions, little girl. Get out of my face. And I was like, I'm asking myself the same questions, except she has zero filter. And so I'm like, I'm sure her parents are talking about the same thing. And people are wondering. It's so, but you know, during I started a podcast. That was my excuse to talk to my friends on a regular basis and bring structure to my days. So I ended up interviewing like a person every day, 5 days a week. And every day I would like stalk the person for the next day and learn everything about them and think about them all day and meditate on them. And like, what can I ask them and what can we talk about? And that gave me a sense of like purpose. And then I would meet them on the screen and we would record, and it felt very like, okay, even though I wasn't getting paid for it, it felt like I have a job. I have somebody to meet at this time and it matters. This is why it matters. And it was very healing. These one-on-one coffee dates, you know, I talked to a lot of people of color. We talked about hair, and I went on a whole hair journey in the pandemic, and it really helped me to focus on something other than, can I breathe?
Yeah. Yes.
That, I feel like that saved me in a lot of ways.
So many questions bubbling. I do want to rewind because you framed something that I think a lot of people went through, which is like, my identity was this thing. This thing is now gone. So I'm curious, when you were asking the question, who am I if I am not the person on Broadway, if I am not a singer, if I am not this person, what answers did you find?
Oh, gosh. You know, that's also around the same time that I've never thought about health insurance. Stay with me because I know it sounds like I'm jumping.
I'm with
But
you.
I've never thought about health insurance because I've always had it. But when you stop working, you lose your health insurance. And it made me think, oh my God, wait. But I'm a human. And if something's wrong with me, I need to be able to go to the doctor. But I can't go to the doctor unless I have a job? Unless my job is paying for, like, offering me health insurance. And it made me think about humanity. It made me think about people in a different way. And so when my identity was like kind of stripped from me for a little bit, I measured my days in a different way in terms of, okay, can I plant seeds? Did I plant a seed today? Who am I talking to today? What connections did I make today, even from my own home? Like, it wasn't so much about what did I get done, but what did I do today that could possibly blossom into something else down the line? It made me think about, okay, if there's not Broadway, what else is there? Because before the pandemic, I made my whole income, my whole living from this one source of income. And I never thought about doing anything else. I never had a plan B because I never needed one. The longest I ever went without working was 3 little spoiled months. And then I got my next gig. Well, now it's been 4 years since I've been on Broadway. That's wild. That's crazy. And it made me so much more aware of, wait, how have I built the foundation of my life? Have I built the foundation of, I'm just going to be in a show and hop from show to show for the rest of my life until I die? Was that my plan? That's not a solid plan. That's not a solid plan. I was flying by the seat of my pants in my 20s, and it kept working. So I never had to think about it. Now I'm in my early 30s, and I'm still in the process of, but it's exciting because I've started working on a foundation that can take me through my life and not just fly by the seat of my pants, hoping I'm always employed. Being an actor can be so fickle, and I never thought about it. Starting my podcast made me feel like, oh wait, I'm actually the boss of something. I wonder if you feel like this too, Jack. It's like I am finding guests who I think are interesting, who I want to talk to and have interesting conversations with. And if I think they're an asshole, I don't have to air it. I don't have to use it. I'm the boss. I'm scheduling it. I can do 2 a day. I can do 1 a day. I can make it 30 minutes. I can make it 2 hours. If it's not going well, I can cut it off in 15 minutes. It felt good to be the boss of something. And as an actor, I never had that power. I'm always at the mercy of somebody else. I'm always hoping somebody greenlights me. Somebody gives me the go ahead. Somebody chooses me. Someone says, I like you. Can you do this? I'm always waiting for the validation and approval of something outside of myself. With my podcast, it felt like I've already interviewed 50 people. If you say no, it's okay. If you don't want to come on, it's okay. It's not even personal. I'm still going to do my podcast. I'm still going to keep doing my thing. And one no is not going to stop me. That felt good. It made me feel like, wait a minute, there is more out there than this one thing that I've been tying my whole identity into. And so it kind of forced me to get outside of my comfort zone. And God is really funny because I've been praying for years, Lord, I want to have 7 lines of income. I want to have income coming from all these different places. Well, guess what? It's really hard for God to answer that prayer if I'm not doing anything outside of my one bread and butter. And so I have all these hobbies that I've begun. We're not rolling in the dough at all. But I've begun to monetize my podcast. I've begun to monetize my Instagram. I've begun to to monetize my blog and coaching, and I've gotten into commercials and voiceovers. All these things that I have not really thought about before. And so now it's like, all right, where does my focus go? The minute you put your whatever you focus on increases. If I now I can zero in on any one of those things and build it. Just like you do any one career. It's like, but you got to start it to build upon it. So now I have all these little seeds planted, just waiting to be watered and nourished. So I still don't really know how to answer the initial question that you asked. How have I answered that question of who am I without this one thing? But I guess I'll just say, like, it changed my perspective on tying my identity into one
spot.
into one spot.
Yeah. I mean, it's I love the way you present it, and in so many ways, it sounds like um, the word reclaiming is fraught because it might imply that you had it and then lost it. But the general idea of like reclaiming your power, like sort of experiencing life in a way that is beautiful. And I do think there is a place for it in your 20s when like you don't know and everyone you know also doesn't know.
Right.
And particularly if you're in New York, you're just like, we can be out till fucking 6 a.m. and it doesn't matter. And I'll go to work the next day and I'll get another part and I'll go do this thing. And like, it like, like statistically speaking, it's batshit crazy. Like no one on earth could ever suggest it. But when you're living it, ooh, it's so good. Oh my God, it's so good. Like, may not be advisable, but ooh, it's fun. Oh, it's so fun.
Yeah. I mean, when things have always worked out, you know, you don't really have to think so hard. You're just kind of going. But when you're like, wait, I want to start a family one day. What will I do when I'm pregnant? How will I make money when I'm not fitting in my costumes on stage?
Right.
Like, what will I do if I get in a show that doesn't last 7 years? Like, beautiful.
Right.
Most shows don't. What? Do you just be stressed the whole time? You just jump the ship before you think it's going to close to be safe? Are you always jumping ship? Like, now my whole goal now, Jack, is to build a foundation to where the next show that I do, it's okay if it's open for a day. I'll be okay, and I can enjoy the whole. Obviously, I want it to be open longer than that. I want it to run and run, but it would be nice to have that sense of like, I know who I am. I've got my eggs not all in one basket, and if this turns into a dumpster fire, it's okay. It really is okay. Like when Beautiful closed, when we got our closing notice, I will say, I remember turning off my phone, turning off my Wi-Fi, going home, shutting the blinds, and just laying on the couch like a slob for like 48 hours. Nobody could get a hold of me. Everyone was trying to text me being like, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? Oh, I heard Beautiful's closing. And I had no capacity to like write back any pleasantries. I was so caught off guard and dead to the world and hurt. It's my first Broadway show, a show that I truly, truly loved. Getting the closing notice was heartbreaking. I don't ever want to be in that position again of, oh God, my show is closing and it's the end of the world. Like, and I think maybe you have to have it once. It's like your first love. You get heartbroken. Now you know what that is.
Yeah.
And hopefully, you know, it gets easier down the line because you have something to compare it to. But I'm just, you know, moving forward, I hope it's up from here and building stronger foundations.
Yeah, I mean, there's a unique cruelty, right? Because, like, so on the one hand, if you were completely to separate like your rational mind and your artistic mind by itself is mourning, I don't get to be around the cast every day. I don't get to be in this theater. I don't get to have this routine that I love. I don't get to perform this art. Like, just the creative side of you is already going through this mourning. And
Yeah.
then like your whole other self is like, also, I need to fucking pay rent and I don't know when I'm going to get in another show. I don't
Yeah.
have anything lined up because we were going for 7 years. Like, and my experience of life is that we're not really built to navigate two kinds of grief at the same time. Like,
Mm.
either you can die a creative death and be like, ooh, that hurts in this specific way. And then there's life logistics. So it's like, that also hurts, but in a totally different way. And when we have to go through them at the same time, like, oh,
Yeah.
ugh, like, it's just, oh, it's miserable. Oh
It
my God, it's miserable.
it really is. And confusing, and I feel like people, not everyone understands what that might feel like.
Yeah.
And it's hard to explain it if they don't know, but it's totally a thing.
I hope you're enjoying my conversation. I just wanted to send a few notes your way about things I have coming up. On April 7th, my next single is coming out. It is called Writer's Block. It is my first collaboration with a producer from Toronto named Ugly Fun, and it was an incredibly exciting and joyful process to make it with him. He has such a unique sound, and I'm really, really excited to share that with you. And then secondarily, I have a show, if you happen to be in the Denver area, on April 14th at the Marquee Theater. Doors at 7, show is at 8. I will be opening up for Toon Mac.
I think the other thing you're touching on, and like I'm making a mental note to myself, I really want to hear about your hair journey. I want to hear all about your hair journey. But before we get there, um, I think the other thing you're talking about is something we're going to see more of, and like, um, I don't want this to sound overly pessimistic. I feel like, at least for now, this country has voted with its dollars so as to say, like, we only value art to a point. And the fact that you make art is not enough. And the fact that you are doing these things that are hard is not enough. And we're only going to shell out so much. And so the life of the artist in this country for a long time has been fraught because there is no stability, because there is no health insurance, because you don't know where the next gig is coming from. And like, you can love it, you can hate it. That's kind of where we are. And in a really beautiful way, because of the way we are evolving toward a creator economy, like, it's going to provide so much more opportunity for someone like you to say, like, I don't have to suffer two kinds of heartbreak. Like, I can mourn that my show is closing, but I'm not also mourning that I don't have any money. I'm not also mourning that I don't know what to do with my life. Like, the fact that you can monetize Instagram and a podcast and a blog and do voiceover work almost all from home, by the way, which is also dope,
Exactly.
means that you can just operate from a place without attachment to the outcome of some of the things you pursue artistically, which, in my experience, is
Yeah.
when the best art gets made. Because if you're
Yeah.
like, ooh, I don't love this show, but if I don't do it, I starve. Guess I'll jump in the show I don't care about. That's not good. Like, that's not a
Right?
good outcome. We shouldn't be
Right.
celebrating that. Yeah.
I completely agree. And it just kind of gives us like our freedom back when we're able to like
Yes.
have those other outlets. And like during this time away from the stage, I doing voiceovers, I got one of the checks from, and I don't want to really talk about money, but one of my checks from a voiceover job I did was exponentially more than what I was currently doing in a regional show that I was performing in for 3 months. And the one and it made me think, did I just choose the wrong industry? Like, why did I choose the industry where I have to be there every single day, healthy, every single day, working, sweating, maybe even like hurting my body 8 times a week, 6 days a week? It's a lot of work. It's hard work.
Yeah.
and it's tedious. It's the same thing that I did yesterday and the same thing I'm going to do tomorrow. That, and it pays this much. And there are other things in the same arena where you can show up in your pajamas, hello, voiceovers, and work.
A wink.
Right? And work for an hour, maybe 3 hours, and then get paid. Residuals even. Like, there are other things. Like, I always thought about that for Hollywood. I never gravitated towards Hollywood. But, you know, you film the project once. You get it right in however many takes it takes. And then you make the movie or you make the episode or whatever. And then it's out there in the world for people to enjoy on repeat, on replay. You did the work. You're done. And you get so much more money. It's wild, the difference. It's wild. And so I don't think there's a right or wrong. You know, some people are most gratified by their time on stage.
Yes.
I have been that person for a very long time. And now, because I just got married, my mind is shifting a little bit to how can I spend more time with my husband and make a family? How can I spend maximum time with them when they exist and also birth them into this planet and still make my, like, so now my mind is just like, you know, shifting a little bit for what my new priorities are. But I have always enjoyed the stage. But you know what? I'm not going to lie, Jack. I feel like I'm not allowed to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I enjoy running my own podcasts more than I enjoy being on Broadway.
That's beautiful. That's awesome.
It feels like I can show up and be myself. Whereas on stage, here are my lines. And if I forget them, I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble by a lot of people. I look really dumb. And all the things, like, there's so much other pressure there and a lot of, like, money from, like, I don't know, like, the commercializing part of the Broadway industry. It's just like, if you're not good, we're going to replace you.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And on my podcast, like, good luck replacing me on my podcast.
Yep.
I just get to show up and be me. I can be as pregnant as I want. I can have my Chipotle. We're good.
Sure can.
I can also be snatched. And we're good.
Who knows?
You know? Who knows? Who knows?
Who knows? Oh my gosh. I mean, that feels, or that sounds like a relatively newer revelation, or maybe it's just one that you're like trying on a little more and bringing out into the world, this idea that like the stage was a home and a place that I really cared about, and like my priorities are shifting. And it's probably some weird amalgam, right? Like part of it is marriage, part of it is family, part of it is age, part of it is that the pandemic basically answered the question everyone fears. Like, I don't know what I would do without this. It's like, well, fucking fuck around and find out. Like,
right.
Here you go. Now you
totally.
know. Now you know.
Yeah.
And you can't unknow now that you know.
You can't unknow. And also, like, these things that I've started to dip my toe in, they feel good. It doesn't mean anything I did in the past was bad or wrong or not awesome when I was doing it. But going forward, I think I'm going to probably start shifting a little bit to make sure I can have the life that I want to live for the decades to come and have the freedom to be into different things and hopefully give me time to like travel. My husband hasn't really known me as somebody, as a workaholic who is in a show for years.
Right.
I've done a few regional gigs here and there, which are really nice. But then after the contract is up, I got time off. We go places. And also he gets to visit a new place when I'm on that contract, you know, and he enjoys that. But he's not known me to like be in one place for a very long time. And so I am nervous. Like, is he going to take all the trips without me? Like, he has a lot of family trips that he does with his family. What is Christmas gonna look like? Like, I have no idea. So we're gonna have to figure that out. But also, like, and I can't announce what I'm gonna be doing yet, but I'm going back into a show next month on Broadway, and I'm so happy that it's finally here. But I am definitely thinking ahead of when it is time for me to go, when this show ends, or if I need to leave before it ends. What do I want that to look like? But I know that you touched on my hair journey a little bit, and we don't really I mean, I don't know how much time we have, so we don't have to get all the way into it, but just briefly touching on that, like, and why it matters so much to me is a few years ago, nobody who knew me knew what my actual hair looked like, my real hair. Nobody saw it. And I hid it under wigs. There was nothing wrong with it. I just liked wigs better, and I didn't know how to care for my curls. I always straightened my hair, and that's a whole other conversation. Just growing up, it was like straight hair is what you do when you want to be put together. Your curly hair is not good enough. It's not kept. Like, it's the equivalent of walking outside in your pajamas. That is how I was raised. And so I kind of was ashamed of my own natural texture. And but I have really bad FOMO. And when I was in the dressing room at Beautiful, everybody was talking about like their hair and their curls, and I couldn't be a part of the conversation because I always straightened my hair or was wearing wigs, and I wanted to be a part of the conversation. They talked about it every day. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go natural. And so that's kind of how I started my journey. And then also, like, I took a class, an on-camera class, and the teacher and I wore like the cutest wig that day because I had like an important meeting later. And the teacher was like, stop, Salisha, you're not yourself. What's going on? And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, actually, I think I know. And she didn't want to say. She's a white lady. I was like, tell me, I'm paying you a lot of money. Just spit it out. And she was like, I think it's your hair. I'm like, what's wrong with my hair? She did not want to say it, Jack. She was like, it's not you. It's changing your personality. And I was like, spit it out. Tell me everything that you're thinking. And so she kept going, but she was very cautious. She was like, if it was between, if I was casting and it was between you and another girl who was equally as talented, I'd probably go with the other girl if she didn't have a wig on, because I want to know what's underneath there, but I don't know how to have the conversation. I don't know how to bring it up, and I don't want to say the wrong thing. And so to avoid the whole thing altogether, I would just cast this other person. I'm like, oh, enough said. That's it. I'm not straightening my hair ever again. Like, literally, and I'd already begun to stop straightening my hair, but if you looked at my Instagram at that time, you never saw my curls. And so now I'm like, okay, how can I shift to where when you see me, you can see my hair? You know what I look like. And I made it a point that when you look at my Instagram, you know what my hair looks like. And starting my podcast, interviewing women who I envied their curls. It gave me the opportunity and a platform to not just know what they're doing, but to ask them all the questions without sounding like, I don't know, like I'm asking for myself, but also on behalf of other people because it's a show.
Yes.
And so they want to help. And I'm able to ask dumb questions because it's bigger than me. And it was just like, it was helpful. And from people who listened, they also reported that it was helpful. Did I lose you? Are you still there? You're still there.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like a very, very brief like overview of my hair journey, of like why I started my podcast, Black Hair in the Big Leagues, and why I'm natural today. I'm like, a lot of people are getting cast on Broadway and not being wigged. So let me figure out what's going on my head.
Awesome.
That's all I got.
I love it. I don't know if this is an overreach, but I'm curious, like, So there's the hair journey, there's a transition from like stage being the most important thing to realizing that like your own creations are the most important thing. Like there is this sort of like, again, it's this owning of identity. It's like it's fascinating. Like, how do you feel now?
I look at things very differently. I look at before it was like, oh man, I really want that job. Like I just want to get cast, or I want to be a part of something. And I do still want to be a part of awesome projects that I think are great. But now when I look at the world, Jack, I see, okay, okay, first of all, look around you right now. Everything that you touch, everything that you see is someone else's dream. This microphone that I'm speaking into, someone created this. And they had a whole bunch of people who worked for the company to manufacture it and to bring it into existence. All those people, they had a good job. They have a good job, but it's all to make one person's dream come true. When I am in a show and it's my dream role, how great. That is so awesome. But also, I am just one piece of the puzzle, one pawn of this bigger machine at hand here. It is a show that has a lot of people working for the person who wrote it or who wanted to bring it into creation. It was actually their idea. This is their project. And everybody else is just a part of it. And so I don't know if I'm really articulating what I'm seeing in my mind very well, but now I see things as, what is the bigger thing happening here? And what role am I playing in this thing? Is this my idea and people are helping my vision come into reality? And they're excited, and it's okay for people to be excited, to want to work for me. At first I was like, wait, that's so weird. I don't want to waste their time. No. There are a lot of people who want to be told what to do. They want direction in their life, or working for you. It is an internship for them, or it helps them with their school studies, or it gives them experience, or they get a credit, whatever it is. And so people have their reasons for it, wanting to work for you. And I just have to like put my mind around that, because I've always been that person. Like, I want to work at Disney, but really it's Walt's vision. You know, I don't know if I'm articulating this well, but do you kind of get what I mean?
Entrepreneur, totally get it.
Yeah.
Like, there are some people who it's like, I would rather drive the boat alone because it's my boat, and it always will matter more to me that it's my boat and that I get to drive. And for a long time, we maroon ourselves alone because we're like, I don't want to steal anyone else's time from their boat. I want you to drive your boat, and you to drive your boat, and you to drive your boat. And then you realize that the people who are fucking crazy or stupid or both enough to take their own boat out into the ocean and hope for the best, like, we're a weird breed.
Yeah.
And it's not better or worse.
Right.
It is not character. It's none of that shit.
At all.
Like,
no.
But I have an allergy to working in someone else's system. And I don't say that with pride. Like, I'm a fucking pain in the ass, and I don't mean to be. I don't mean to be a difficult person. I don't want to be someone who's incompatible with things, but like, I don't know, I'm almost 36. I've tried a bunch of things in my life, and I can tell you that when I'm in someone else's system, all I think about is like, I don't like the system. I want to break it and change it because I see what I would do differently, which is at once interesting, and for everyone else working there, a giant pain in the ass, because like, can you just shut up and teach the class, please? Because that's all we're paying you to do, which is super fair.
Sometimes when you're in someone else's boat, sometimes it is a good time, you know, but
totally.
But a lot of times it's not. But a lot of times it can be. But now I guess what I'm saying is what you're saying too, is like, I'm just more aware of going forward. When is it my boat?
Yes.
And how many creative projects can I birth that are not about me?
Right. So okay. I'm excited to ask this question. So like, I think when people think about performing, they think about performing in the way that you were on Broadway. Like I am putting on a costume, I am stepping into another person, and I'm becoming someone else. I think leadership and entrepreneurship and pick all your buzzwords within that category, they also require a form of performance. But it's performing as yourself. Like how are you experiencing performing as yourself versus performing as another person?
I've stopped code switching. And I realize when I just show up being me, it is way more well received versus when I show up as who I think my audience wants me to be. My audience being, whoever I'm talking to.
Sure.
But when I am myself, it feels good. It puts other people at ease. And I've been rewarded for showing up as myself. And so I realize even when it feels scary, I should probably keep doing that. I should keep showing up as myself.
Yes.
Because I see the payoff. I feel the payoff. And even though it goes against some of the things that I learned growing up, I think it's worth it. And I also see that when I show up as myself, and I might be like breaking a few rules that have been ingrained in me, it gives other people permission to show up as themselves. And that's all we kind of want without maybe asking for it or realizing it, is permission to just be. And so when other people are kind of going against the grain a little bit, you're like, oh, is it okay if I do that too? Oh, you can be an actor and a writer? That's okay. Or I can show up to this fancy event and not be so proper, and it's okay. Like one of my good friends, she's like 70 plus years old, and she's loaded. She's so rich. She's just like dripping in money. And I love her. I love her and I love her husband. I love them so much. But when I first met her, I thought like, oh my goodness, I have to be like on my P's and Q's because she's very fancy. Hanging out with her and me being myself, I realized, oh, wait a minute. She was waiting for somebody else to be themselves because she's from the middle of nowhere and all she wants is to crack open a beer. She's not from this world. She married money. And she just wants to freaking relax. And because I was relaxed, I got to see her relax. It changed our whole relationship and our whole vibe. And if I was always like, because she met me because she was a producer on a show that I did and that I started, and she would like invited me somewhere, and I'm like, if I had to always feel like, okay, she knows me as being a star of a show, I need to be I am a star, and this is how stars act and talk and dress. Like, get out of here. Like, no, who has the energy for that? Like, I don't have time or energy for that. This is who I am.
Yes.
Yep. And sometimes my sentences don't add up. Sometimes they're not grammatically correct. Who cares? Next. Who cares? Like on my podcast, Jack, I don't edit it unless if my guest asks for it to be edited. I'm like,
sure.
This is what I sound like. This is how I stutter. This is who I am. I'm not taking out my flubs. This is literally what I sound like. And if you talk to me in person, this is what I'm going to sound like.
Yeah.
It's like the people who like overly edit themselves on Instagram. It's like, people are going to have to see you in real life, right? What you going to do?
There's another conversation about music artists who get on stage and lip sync over their music because they have too much auto-tune on. And it's like, hey, I also know what it sounds like in the car. Sounds great. And I know you made it. And
And
Like, what are we doing here? Like, what are we doing?
what
It's like,
are
it's
we
not you. It's not you. It's you through like 9,000 processors to create a specific sound. And it's
Yeah.
like, which again is okay. But if you're going to perform live, it's okay. The answer, the question is not how do I replicate this exact sound from the studio on stage? It's like, how do I build a fan base that loves me as a person enough to get the
Yes.
joke that like I auto tune in the studio, it sounds great, you love listening to it, I'm in person now, I can't run auto tune, so it will sound different.
Yeah.
Great, awesome, like that's okay, it's
Yeah.
totally okay.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine a world where everybody showed up as themselves and was transparent about it? I feel like we're all trying to figure it out, but it always looks like somebody else has figured it out.
You're so right. And if you look at the number of people who are putting on airs as something they've become for people to emulate versus people who are actually just being themselves and then being emulated, like the scoreboard is on the wrong side. But something you
Yeah.
said that's so important is like when you or I or any individual lives in alignment with who they really are, it creates ease and it creates permission and it creates
Yeah.
visibility to the fact that it is possible, and not it is possible in theory alone in your apartment. It is possible in your work, it is possible in your art, it is possible in your relationships. Like, it just creates opportunities for more people to just fucking let go, even if only for a couple minutes, even if only in a small context. but but it's so addicting. As
Yeah.
soon as you start, you're like, ooh, I can't go back because like this shit is way better,
It feels
way
way
better,
better.
way
Just
better.
show up as yourself. And when you find a flow, it's like swimming downstream. It when things start
Mm,
to click, you're like, oh, this feels good. When the times that you're like, oh God, I really hope I get this, or I really hope this, and you're like all bent up and nervous and all this stuff. Like, that's not flow. And sometimes you can still get those things and it'll work out. But the best things are the things that just make sense. I'm sorry, there's my throat. Oh, but when things make sense and they just fall into place, it feels good. I think about like my dating life, how everything felt like maybe this, like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. No pun or anything like that, but it just didn't work. And when I when I met my husband, it was like, oh, yep, yep, I knew I was gonna marry him in 2 weeks. I knew it. I knew it. It just felt easy. I'm like, oh, the whole time I've been dating, and I dated a lot when I was on tour. I dated across America. I had a hoe in every area code, every major city in America. I had a man, and and but none of them felt. It didn't feel good, and because I was
mm,
always too much. Like things never. I was never like guys always made me feel like I just was too much. And when I met Andrew, he never ever made me feel like I was too much. Me being a 10, that's his like fun zone. He's like, "Oh, this is easy." Like he just loves me when I am extra, or when anybody else would consider it too much. He loves me just the way I am. It's just a flow. It has always flowed. I've never lived with somebody who I was dating in my life, and when it was time for him to move in, it just was a flow. He came over, he left his stuff, and that was that. Neither of us questioned it. It just felt good. It
yeah,
just felt good. I'm like, oh yeah. And now we're married, and it feels good.
there you go. Yeah. They're like, I think one of the most frustrating lessons that I continue to relearn in my life is that if you're ever on the fence about something, it means you already know the answer.
Whoo!
That's a soundbite that's gonna fuck up some people's days. Because it's true. Because when you sit there and you're like, oh God, should I not? It's like, you already fucking know. Of course you know. Your intuition is screaming loudly and you can hear it.
You can
But you
hear
are
it.
looking for every reason to not want to agree or trust it. Because
Just
it's not the outcome you want for whatever
right.
reason. Like, but oh boy. I was like, I'll give you an example because I'll take ownership that I still struggle with this, even though I know what I just said and I believe it. Like, I spent a lot of my life believing that what my life would look like was like like 2 kids, 2 dogs, white picket fence, house, yard, like the whole American dream or whatever the fuck you want to call it. And like through a lot of my own work and undoing my own stories, I've realized like I'm not really compatible with that. And the piece that is hardest for me to
Wow.
let go of is having a dog. Because like I grew up with dogs. Like I I went through a divorce after the pandemic. Like I was one of the couples that didn't make it. That story has ended up being so completely beautiful because we didn't let the marriage devolve to a point where we hated each other. We said like,
Good.
hey, this isn't working. Why don't we evolve it and make it better? And we did, which is so beautiful.
That's
Um,
great.
no, it's awesome. Yeah, like I feel extraordinarily lucky, and like it was hard. Like work went in, of course, but in some ways, like what was most inspiring for me is when I was starting to think about it, and I would Google like, is there such a thing as a not horrendous divorce? The answer was no. The answer on the internet is like all men are the worst ever, and you should all die. And
Oh
that's kind of
no.
it. Like those were the only stories available.
Oh
So it was like, I don't.
no.
I think I'm okay, and we just have an acknowledged difference of how we want to live life, and there's still so much good here. And is there that story? The answer was no. The answer was no. So anyway, like so that happened. It's been really beautiful. We have 2 dogs. They primarily live with Amelia, my co-parent, and Saxon, our daughter. And so it's not that I don't have dogs in my life, but I live alone and I'm an artist, and so I spend a lot of time alone. And so all the things about a dog, the
Yeah.
companionship, an exercise buddy, someone to come home to, blah blah blah, right? Like I can
Yeah.
give myself and anyone I ask 1,000 reasons why I should have a dog, and I fucking know in my guts I shouldn't
Yeah. Oh my
because
gosh.
I was born to move. I love to mix things up. I love change.
Yeah.
I love to not have routine. Like all the things that bring me joy
Wow.
are
Yeah.
terrible for having a dog. And I don't want to get a dog just to have him or her live a terrible life because I
Wow.
couldn't fucking get over myself. And so I went and saw a puppy 2 days ago over the weekend because I was
Oh,
like,
Jack.
maybe if I'm holding it, it'll feel different. And I was like, and I was holding this puppy, feeling my heartbreak of like, no, I can't do this. I'm not going to do this to this dog. I'm not going to
Yeah.
do it. And so
Yeah,
it's
your
like,
intuition knows. And you know, it
oh,
could
it knows.
change. It could change down the
A
line, you
hundred
know.
percent.
And that's great. It's just like I think we all have that gut of knowing what to do. It's just a matter of, are we going to listen?
Mm-hmm.
Are we
Mm-hmm.
going to pay attention to it?
Yes. Yes.
I P.S. I might have dinner very soon.
You
I
should.
hear I hear plates clinking and my stomach is grumbling. But I'm still here though. I'm still here.
No, you're golden. The oh goodness, what was I going to say? The last thing that we can touch on, and then I'll let you go eat, which you totally should. It's a healthy thing to do. I think the funny thing about intuition is that like when you first start listening to it, like the first steps can suck because you haven't actually made it deep enough into the transition or the change or the letting go of to get to the point where it starts to make sense. And so at first, you're like letting go of these things that you care about, or you're trying something and you suck at it and you're like, why? Why the
Yeah.
fuck am I doing this? And again,
Yeah.
all you want to do is rebel and give up. And like, by call it luck or perseverance, or in my case, probably stubbornness, you're like, nope, like I just know that this is what I want to do next.
Yeah.
And at some point, which you don't know and have no access to, you don't get a fucking date on your calendar, you just get a moment. And
Yeah.
now, like, I think I got them once a year, once every year and a half, where you can just stop and you sort of look at your life and you're like, oh, this is why. This is why I went through that. This is why I did this thing that sucked. This is why that didn't work out. Like, all of it just starts to make sense. And so what I so applaud you for doing is going through the uncomfortable early C's when you're trusting your intuition. And it's like, I'm fucking seasick and I would like to not do this right now. Please and thank you.
Yes.
But to anyone else listening, if you have an idea and it sounds crazy and it feels crazy and you don't know why, but the idea isn't going away, just dip your toe in.
Just dip
your toe in.
Just a little.
Just to see.
And in times of doubt, take action. Somebody said that to me today. I was like, ooh. His name is Mark Netter, who said that to me. In times of doubt, when you don't know, just do. I don't know. That it spoke to me in that moment. I could see the other side of that too, but it keeps you from being stagnant. Because once you're stagnant, it's kind of hard to move at all. So
yes. Well, and like what I'd add on top, the pain of indecision, most of the time, worse than the pain from making the decision.
Right?
The indecision is the most uncomfortable place. It is terrible. And even if you fuck it up, even if you get it wrong, like now you know what to do, which is unfuck it up. So like you know exactly what the next steps are, which is a lot better than being like, ooh, I don't know what to do now. Skip. Salisha, this was a joy. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your stories with me.
Thank you
this
for
was
having
so
me.
fun.
Thank you. This has been great.
This was a pleasure. Absolutely. Well, enjoy the rest of your day and your dinner.
Thank you so much. Oh yeah, I forgot you're on West Coast time. Thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for listening to Stage Dive. I'm having so much fun having all these conversations and meeting these wonderful, wonderful people. But I appreciate that this is also going out to you, the person who is listening. So my request, my ask, my desire, if you have any curiosities, questions, guest recommendations, suggestions for the podcast, please send us an email at stagedivepodcast@gmail.com. We read every single email that comes through. We will get back to you. We really do want to hear what you love about the podcast, things that you think could improve, and how we can make this a better show for you. So please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you so much.